Right. Thank you, Mark, for joining us and sharing that insight. Now we move on. U.S. President Donald Trump and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu are set to meet at the White House today to discuss a potential peace deal to end the two-year war in Gaza. The U.S. President says a deal is likely, with proposals including the release of all hostages within 48 hours, Israel freeing hundreds of Palestinian prisoners, and amnesty for Hamas members who commit to peace. The plan also outlines a gradual Israeli withdrawal and a transitional Gaza government, while acknowledging Palestinian aspirations for a future state. Further, Netanyahu faces challenges from hardline coalition partners who reject any role for the Palestinian Authority or discussion of a Palestinian state. U.S. officials hope both sides will agree, with President Trump expressing optimism about a breakthrough. Now, for this discussion, we're joined by Mohammed Osman. He's an international relations specialist, joins us live from Cairo. Thank you very much, Osman, for joining us. Welcome to NewsX World. Now, Osman, so far, what do we know about what's on the table for this highly anticipated discussion of the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and President Trump?
Thank you for having me, Asuma. Greetings to you and to your audience. I think that, of course, quite in the center of the negotiations or the discussions that will be held today in the fourth Trump-Netanyahu summit in the United States will be the American initiative for a ceasefire and an eventual settlement in Gaza. It seems that the Americans now are proposing more workable solutions that are more in touch with certain realities and that take into account the interests of the Arab countries and the Palestinians as well, and not only the Israelis. So basically, it's more balanced. It's far from perfect. It reeks of imperfection. Actually, it's not even good what Trump is proposing. However, it is much better than what the Israelis were trying to push forward. That is the complete long-term reoccupation of the Gaza Strip by Israel, the prevention of the reconstruction of the Gaza Strip, and eventually the depopulation of Gaza, which is basically an act of ethnic cleansing and genocide, of course. So the Americans now are pushing forward something that is much more reasonable, something that will require the Israelis to eventually pull out of the Gaza Strip, even though they do not impose a certain timetable for this gradual withdrawal. However, it is established as one of the provisions of the agreement. And of course, in return, the Palestinians or the Palestinian factions, namely Hamas, will have to release the hostages and the detainees within 48 hours, and they will have to also relinquish power in Gaza and disarm. Of course, these are very, very ambitious provisions or expectations from both Israel and Hamas, and I know that the agreement will definitely not be convenient for both Israel and Hamas. However, certain concessions have to be taken. The Arab states, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and even other Islamic countries like Pakistan and Indonesia and Turkey, they have all told the President Trump when they were meeting with him last week that they are on board with what he is proposing. So now it's up to them to pressure Hamas and the Palestinian factions in order to agree to this agreement. The main problem of contention is Israel, and this is up to the United States to do. Of course, Netanyahu will never agree willingly to such an agreement or such a settlement. He will not be convinced to adhere to these arrangements. However, he can be compelled by the Americans. This will be put to the test today at today's meeting. Netanyahu already had a reportedly very tense meeting with Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. Both Jared Kushner, President Trump's son-in-law and an associate of Israel, and also Steve Witkoff, President Trump's envoy to the Middle East and other regions in the world. So those two American officials have met with Netanyahu to try to convince him to agree to the proposal. We will see what will happen in the meeting. It's either that Trump will have his way and impose his vision on Netanyahu, and then we will actually there will be an actual prospect of ending this war in the very near future, or Netanyahu will leave a lasting impression on Trump and will convince him to change his mind or to make alterations or amendments to the agreement that will not be agreeable to the Palestinian side, which will basically push everything back to square one, and the war will resume without any constraints. So I think we will have answers to our very valid questions within the next few hours, Asuma.
Yes, thank you very much, Osman, Muhammad Osman, for joining us and sharing that insight and enlightening us with the details. Now we